Now we're going to go into the master talks, and our first talk is going to be by Geyer. And she is a master student in clinical psychology at the University of Lausanne, where she's also part of the student association PALA. And she's going to present her master thesis, which is about psychedelic-induced mystical states and whether these states are indeed metacognitive feelings. And her thesis is supervised by Federico Seragnoli, the co-founder and CEO of ALPS. And, well, I will let her explain what metacognitive feelings are, as I'm sure she will do a much better job at it than me. So please warmly welcome with me, Geyer. Perfect.
Do you hear me? Oh. Thanks everyone for the warm welcome. Thank you, Dave, as well. I'd like to say I'm really happy to be here today, very grateful, and I'm also a bit nervous, so please bear with me. And today I'm going to try and give an at least partial answer to this following question: are psychedelic-induced mystical states metacognitive feelings? So hopefully it'll make a bit more sense by the end of the presentation. So Dave already said it, but I'm doing my clinical psychology masters in UNIL, and my two supervisors are Professor Joël Bilieu and Federico Seragnoli, and I'd like to thank Federico that's here today for his continual enthusiasm and also for his very creative and generous spirit. I'd also like to thank all these people that contributed in developing the main idea on which this presentation is based. So this paper isn't published yet, but hopefully it will be at one point. And let's dive in. So what are metacognitive feelings? So already your mind, your brain is a cognitive system, a cognitive machine that's constantly processing thoughts, perceptions, ideas, memories, so cognitions. And what it needs is a meta-system to be able to organize these cognitions. So that system is metacognition. It's the capacity to be aware of your thoughts and to manipulate them, but also to represent yourself, so to be self-aware of your own consciousness. Quite loosely, it's defined as thinking about thinking, which actually mainly concerns one aspect of metacognition, which is knowledge you have about your thoughts. But there is a second aspect, which is the regulation of cognition, and this sometimes happens more unconsciously or implicitly. So, metacognition works hard every day, typically in everyday life, for example, when you're deciding what you're going to cook tonight, but also when you're in therapy, looking at your thought processes and your patterns, and when you're meditating, so you're monitoring your thoughts, you're being conscious of them arising in your consciousness, and then deciding to reorient your attention to your breathing, for example. And today, we're going to concentrate on metacognitive feelings, which are part of this regulation aspect of cognition. And they actually bridge the unconscious side of metacognition and the conscious aspect. Okay, so let's say I give you this puzzle to solve. So you need to move 3 matchsticks to make 3 squares rather than 4. So I can see that maybe some of you are feeling some feelings of curiosity. Maybe you've already seen this puzzle before and you're getting a feeling of familiarity, or the tip of the tongue effect, which is when you recognize something but you can't give the answer straight away, but you already know that the answer is there somewhere. You might start solving the puzzle, reading the instructions again, feeling a bit confused, feeling effort, but maybe also feeling interested. And once you find the answer, you might get a quite profound feeling of having learned, who knows, with a puzzle, or maybe a feeling of having found, and maybe even a eureka feeling if you've been trying to solve this puzzle for many years, for example. So these feelings are metacognitive feelings. They're feelings that arise in your conscious mind from bottom-up procedural processes, and they inform you about your cognition. So they allow you to monitor your cognition, so to see how your thought process is going, and they also allow you to control your cognition, so to reorient or continue as it's going, if it's going well. So there are three types. There's the goal-related feelings. They're the ones that are going to drive you to initiate action, to start a cognitive process. There's the process-related feelings that are the ones that are going to inform you if it's going well or not. So either you continue your thought process, or maybe you reorient, find another strategy. And there's the outcome-related feelings, or the feelings of knowing, that are going to inform you that you've found the answer and that you now understand. So, did someone find the answer of the puzzle? Yeah, go on. The bottom three. Okay, maybe I'll show you the answer. Here it is. So I wanted to ask you a question. How does it feel to find or to realize something? How did it feel in your... Okay. Yes. So usually when you figure something out, it feels good, so you get these positive emotions. It feels like you're right, like you found the truth, even though sometimes it's not the case. And even if it's a brief moment, you're fully in the present moment, and sometimes time stops, even if it's for an instant. So in this case, we can talk about eureka feelings, which are the most intense feelings of knowings, and these are feelings of insight or of epiphany. Okay, so now let's talk about mystical experiences. So, all over the history of the world, psychedelics and religion and spirituality have been tightly linked. So we know that for sure in South America, but there's also, for example, in Africa, in Gabon, with the iboga plant. And it's still up to debate if in India, the soma drink had some sort of psychedelic inside. Closer to us, here in Switzerland, we have the Greek Eleusinian mysteries that have said now to contain some sort of LSD alkaloid, and maybe they are the basis for the development of the Christian Eucharist. And so this tight link can be explained because psychedelics is the most reliable way to occasion a mystical state. So you might, for example, have another spiritual practice like meditation and spend years trying to get to this state, whereas you might take a psychedelic once or twice and get to that feeling, that experience. So many people have tried to describe the undescribable. Here are some classical authors that describe dimensions of the mystical experience. And I just want to say, before I detail each each dimension, that these were used as factors for the basis of the mystical experience questionnaire, which is the validated measure of the mystical experience that we use in psychedelic research. So, the mystical dimension of the mystical experience has three facets, or three aspects. The first is that people report a sense of unity, a sense of belonging and interconnectedness with their surroundings, but also with being itself sometimes. People also report a feeling of sacredness, of reverence, or being in contact with a higher being, or with a divine energy. And people also report what is called the noetic quality. So that's the feeling of being in contact with a deep truth, sometimes a feeling of familiarity, as if you already knew this truth, or what you are understanding. And I wanted to ask here if maybe a feeling of familiarity popped into your mind, because the point of this presentation is to build a bridge between feelings of knowing, so these outcome-related metacognitive feelings, and the mystical experience, so especially this noetic quality. People also report deep positive mood, like feelings of joy, ecstasy, gratefulness, love, peace, awe. They also report a feeling of transcending time and space, so that time goes by very differently, either very short or seems like it goes by an eternity. Space also can be different. And people always say how difficult it is to explain the experience, to put it into words, and that actually explaining the experience in words would be very reductionist. Okay, so now in our study, what we did was a retrospective internet survey. We asked people to concentrate on one single psychedelic experience that they had in the past 12 months, so either with LSD, MDMA, or psilocybin. We asked them a range of questions regarding their experience, and we also asked them to fill in the mystical experience questionnaire and the metacognitive feelings questionnaire. So this is a questionnaire that was developed for the purpose of the study, and I'd like to thank Florian as well for helping us improve this questionnaire. And at the end of this questionnaire, we asked if people had revelations or realizations about, well, during their experience, and we wanted to collect some qualitative data, so the content of these revelations. For now, we have 209 participants that responded, but the study is actually still undergoing, so hopefully we'll have more in a few months' time. And the objective of this study was to do an exploratory study to see if this question actually made sense. So if it was possible to compare mystical experiences to metacognitive feelings of knowing, and to try and understand through a cognitive lens these mystical experiences. So now, advice to future student researchers. Yeah, we forgot to put a CAPTCHA at the beginning of our questionnaire, and a few days in, we had like 1,200 responses from a bot that... Okay, anyway. And also the other thing I wanted to say is watch out for influencing data when presenting preliminary results. So unfortunately, that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to have to ask you to not respond to the questionnaire, please. Okay. So in order to see if these two types of experience are comparable, we need to answer a few questions. The first is, are metacognitive feelings actually part of the psychedelic experience, or actually do people report these feelings? The second question would be to know if mystical experiences and these feelings of knowing occur under the same conditions. So we looked into setting, but we're going to look into other things like dosage, substance, motives, etc. We'd also like to know if these feelings of knowing correlate with the MEQ total score, and if they correlate with other dimensions on the MEQ, especially the mystical one, seeing as it was the one that contained this noetic quality. And finally, the eureka feeling, seeing as it's the most intense of these feelings of knowing, is there a special relationship between this feeling and the mystical experience? Okay, and then for qualitative data, maybe we could also see if people report these mystical or spiritual themes when they describe their revelations or realizations, when we ask them about their feelings of knowing. Okay, so once again, preliminary data. So this means that maybe in a few months the results will change, but we hope not. Okay, so the first finding was that metacognitive feelings were expressed during the psychedelic experience. So I was told that this is very difficult to understand, so I'm going to try and explain. This is the Metacognitive Feelings Questionnaire. We asked them for each type of feeling, if they could rate from 0 to 100 how much they felt the feeling during the experience. In blue you have the variation, and in the middle you have the mean score. And what we saw was that people reported all the different types of metacognitive feelings, so related to goal, for example, curiosity, or the feeling of familiarity, yes. They also reported process-oriented feelings, so the feeling of understanding, of interest, of coherence, and especially they reported these feelings of knowing at the top, so quite highly. I mean, the means were pretty high. The feeling of having found, of having learned, and the eureka feeling, the eureka experience. And the eureka experience had quite a high variability because people either rated that they did have one or not, so they usually didn't really rate it in the middle. Then we looked into the mystical experience. So what we saw was that the mean score on the MEQ was 117, which was pretty high, because the total score is 180. And 40% of the sample had met the criteria for a complete mystical experience, so it means that they scored more than 60% on each of the 4 factors. So the mystical, transcendence of time and space, positive mood, and... sorry, I forgot. Okay. Anyway. All right, so now we looked into if these types of experiences occurred under the same conditions, the same contexts or setting. So we did a mean score of these feelings of knowing, and we compared across contexts. So we had ceremonial retreat context, a clinical or psychotherapeutical, home or at a friend's house, nature, party, festival, or club, and research. And what was interesting was that the mystical experience score didn't have any difference between contexts. And for the feelings of knowing, we saw a bit more occurrence of these feelings in clinical and ceremonial settings rather than party, festival, club. And that also made sense because this was more introspective settings, so maybe where people were actually thinking about or having maybe feelings of knowing about their own individual functioning or this kind of thing. Okay, now do these feelings correlate with the mystical experience score? Yes, they do. Oh, sorry. So quite highly, 0.6 is considered a high correlation. And the more intense the feeling of knowing, so the more it approaches a eureka feeling, the more it correlates with this score. These feelings, so the mean score of these feelings of knowing, also correlate especially with the mystical factor, but also with the other dimensions. And what we saw is that the more intense the feeling of knowing was, the more it correlated with the mystical facet of the MEQ. They all also correlated with the other dimensions. And this is the last statistics I'll show you today. What we did here is that seeing as not everyone had a eureka feeling, and not everyone had criteria for a complete mystical experience, we wanted to see if maybe they weren't part of the same group. So what we did was a logistic regression, something like this, to see if the eureka feeling... yeah, sorry, a bit complicated. Anyway, the model was significant, thank God, and it predicted 75% of occurrences of the complete mystical experience, and the eureka feeling was the item that was the most predictive. And actually it was the only predictive one because the other feelings, so feeling of having found, of having learned, weren't predicting this occurrence of the complete mystical experience. So we see that there was a special connection between these two. Okay, and now for more qualitative data. So that was after the Metacognitive's feelings questionnaire. We asked them what they had revelations about, or eureka feelings about. And they reported introspective themes, so regarding their psychological functioning or the role of emotions, or also some people reported some trauma memories coming up. They also reported themes about interpersonal matters, like the importance of forgiveness or of their relationships. Some people also talked about their relationship to plants or to mushrooms. And we had a whole group of people that reported more transcendental themes. So what I mean by that is really getting out of your own individuality and feeling connected with either the abstract form of consciousness or higher being or things like this. So here are some examples. I'll let you read. Okay, now the next ones. And here, well, I'm not going to go back on the definition of on describing the mystical experience, but you can see people report these feelings of unity, of interconnectedness, and of sacredness. Okay. So this was a side note, is that we asked ChatGPT to find a sort of umbrella term to describe these outcome-related feelings, these metacognitive feelings of knowing, and he came up with cognitive enlightenment. So that was quite nice. Okay, so now I'm going to summarize results so we have everything fresh in mind. The first is that mystical experiences and these feelings of knowing occur under similar conditions. The second is that metacognitive feelings of knowing correlate strongly with the MEQ total score and with all factors of the MEQ, but especially with the mystical factor, so the one regarding this noetic quality of the experience. The more intense the feeling of knowing, so the closer it is to a eureka experience, the stronger it correlates to the MEQ total score and the mystical factor. So this one seems to be even more similar to these experiences. And the eureka experience predicts the occurrence of a complete mystical experience. Finally, people's revelations include mystical and spiritual themes. Okay, so we go back to our key question. On one side, we have the mystical experience, and on the other, the eureka experience. So both put you in contact of a feeling of having learned or being in touch with truth or knowledge or understanding. The mystical experience is defined by the sense of interconnectedness that one has, and the eureka experience can be about such a theme, as it could be about other themes. Both imply a transcendence of time, at least briefly for the eureka experience, and both imply a deeply felt positive mood. So one is the brain rewarding you for having found an answer, and the other one is part of the mystical experience. So I ask the question again. It always gets a bit different, this question, the more we know. But are noetic feelings mystical experience, are noetic feelings of the mystical experiences metacognitive feelings of knowing? So, one thing we can definitely conclude is that the metacognitive feelings are part of the psychedelic experience. There seems to be similarities and an overlap between mystical experiences and metacognitive feelings of knowing. So, it makes sense to imagine that we could study these states through a cognitive lens, and that the mystical experience could be a metacognitive feeling of knowing, like a sort of very amplified, modified, prolonged, and intense eureka feeling. Once again, preliminary data. And I thank you. This was a nice quote from someone showing us the importance of curiosity in your life. Okay. Thank you.
Again, we are perfectly in time. You even made up for the time that we were late, so we have enough time for questions.
Thank you. This was so interesting. I have two questions. So I was quite intrigued by the different reports of interpersonal, transcendental, ecological, that slide. Did you, by any chance, conduct interviews on these people and try and understand what led to a rather introspective versus ecological interpretation of their experience?
Well, we didn't, but it would be very interesting to do that. The thing is, here was really a questionnaire on internet, so people just filled in the blank.
Okay.
But it would be very interesting.
And then the second question is, well, in the preliminary data that we have, we also saw a decrease in the mystical experience in the naturalistic setting versus the lab setting. And I noticed on the graph that you showed, there was a similar thing of in ceremonial settings, the MEQ scored lower, I think, if I read it correctly. Oh, next, that one. Then the...
well, we saw the difference.
No, I read that wrong, I think.
Well, actually, there was no statistical difference.
Okay.
But there might be a difference in mean. And maybe if you actually look into the occurrence of the complete mystical experience, which we didn't have time to do, there might be a difference between contexts. So this is really the total score. But there could be variations on the different dimensions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Was in the data, could you find correlations, for instance, between the dose and the type of the substance that was used and the degree to which the metacognitive feelings were present?
Well, that's what we're going to do at one point. Just to say, these statistics were done maybe 1 week ago for this presentation. So hopefully we're going to be able to do that, and probably we'll see an effect at least of the dose on the mystical experience, and hopefully maybe on the feelings of knowing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really love this presentation. I would like to ask, so we are, if there would be then, what would be the link between this and the psychological factors implied in psychotherapy? For example, learning or psychological flexibility. Can we understand these kind of things also through a metacognitive feelings lens?
Which thing? Sorry?
Like psychological flexibility?
Whoa.
Or learning?
Well, I'm not sure I understood your question fully, but do you mean how you could implement that in daily life to be more mindful?
Yes.
That kind of thing? Yeah. Well, that was one of the maybe therapeutic implications of this theory, is that if it is shown that these mystical experiences can be understood through the cognitive lens, so as these feelings of knowing, we could help people be more aware of these feelings in their day-to-day life, and also to be more attuned with the positive aspect, the positive quality, and that could be helpful for people that have depression, for example, or so if that's the question, yeah, okay.
Thanks a lot. That was a really, really interesting study. I'm just wondering if you could get a sense, either in these trip reports or in your research, of whether people fully trusted those feelings of knowing. Like, did you ever have a trip report where someone feels they realize something during the experience and then later they realize maybe it wasn't like that after all?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, now that you say, there was one person that said something like, it was interesting because it's as if he had feelings of, I don't remember what he called it, but I don't remember. But he did, yeah, he said he had these feelings and then he took a step back and then kind of put these into doubt. So I guess you have people that do, but yeah, that was just one report among all the others that were done. But yeah, I guess that's next level metacognition. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, well, thank you first of all, it was really nice, it's an interesting topic. Do you think that knowledge can be built without that feeling of knowing? Do you think that is the starting point of having knowledge, is having to feel that I learned something new?
That's a nice philosophical question. No, I think they're part of our process of learning, like fundamental parts, because they're the ones that make you conscious of what you have to do, what steps you have to take to go towards your goal. So I think, yeah, they're a fundamental part.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Hi, thank you for your presentation. Could you go to your sort of concluding slide?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there, your sort of concluding statement here is, the mystical experience may well be a metacognitive feeling of knowing. I wonder if you might want to reconsider your phrasing. It seems to me a bit strange to characterize an entire experience by a feeling, especially if you broadly define metacognitive feelings as feelings concerning the process or outcome of a particular cognition. I mean, feelings are always about something, and to say that an entire experience is a certain feeling, I'm not sure that really makes sense. You might want to say, the mystical experience may be characterized by, or primarily characterized, or commonly feature a metacognitive feeling of knowing, but I don't know why you would equate an experience to a feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that you're a philosopher, right?
Trying to be subtle.
I remembered your questions at the ALPS conference, and I was thinking, please get Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, maybe we should rephrase, but yeah, the thing is, there's these experiences, and we're trying to look at them through a cognitive framework, and that could seem reductionist, but we're not reducing the quality of the experience. So actually, maybe this could just be one experience with certain quality. These have different qualities well, actually no, quite similar qualities, but cognitive. And what was I going to say? And so they might have similar brain mechanisms, and then it emerges some sort of more complex experience. But fair enough, maybe we should rephrase.
I have a quite similar question, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, and there's probably absolutely no answer, but it's a question I've been having of, do you think that this metacognitive feeling and mystical experience are stemming from the same sort of like mechanism, or coming from the same thing and reaching the same experience, or do you think the experience has overlaps and it's stemming from different mechanisms?
I think the idea, but I'm not 100% sure about it. Well, I don't know. I'd have to really read more and everything. Well, the whole idea is actually based on theoretical basis, so it does make sense on a theoretical level. So I think the experience does stem from the same process, but seeing as it's under a psychedelic state, so an altered state of consciousness, it's much more different, it's maybe more intense, it's not about a specific cognitive thought. It's amplified, so it feels even more, yeah, it's prolonged.
Interesting, thank you. That could account for like the feelings of unity, maybe, as well.
Sorry?
I'll talk to you after.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not very good at neuroscience, so I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
I'd love to ask again about the eureka feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I simply missed it, so maybe you can, in that case, simply repeat. How did you ask people about the eureka feeling? Did you was it also part of a questionnaire to see whether or not they had it? Okay.
Yeah, we asked them at the very end if they had had a eureka feeling or an aha feeling or a revelation.
And did you define for them what you actually mean by that? Because
no, we didn't. We kind of imagined that people would know, but maybe, yeah.
And then another question, maybe it's more generally about the eureka feeling. Do you think I can have a eureka feeling about something that's not true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
And how?
Well, the eureka feeling is a mechanism that's emerging from your brain while your brain is telling you that based on the information I have, I think this is true, and I think I have found.
And
there.
And then how could I, or what could help me to differentiate between that which is useful and that which is not? Because so it seems to be a double-edged sword, no? Mm-hmm. I have this intense feeling, but it might be bullshit, and it might actually be unbeneficial to me and other people. So how do you suggest one goes about trying to get to the core of the truth?
Well, it's hard if it's like a very new subject or that no one really thought about, but let's say otherwise you can kind of compare experiences between people and then confirm with, I don't know. Yeah.
Hi.
Okay.
Yep. Here.
Yeah?
Yeah, thank you. Coming back to the question of the eureka feeling, in the relationship between the mystical experience and the eureka feeling, is it based on the notion that some people on average have an external consciousness that gives them the answer for them to get this eureka feeling? Or is it more of a realization that they themselves have been able to achieve, as, for example, with the sticks, the squares example that you have given. Basically, you have solved the problem for us to experience the eureka moment, right? So I understand many people during psychedelics, they encounter other entities that may help them or even give the solution for them to have this eureka feeling that they later on can bring back to their life. So in this research, do we have account, for example, how many times this mystical experience in relationship to this eureka moment was given by an external consciousness compared to when it was by their own sense of self?
We didn't really look into that, but I think a few people reported feeling of having understood this from something else. Like, for example, the mushrooms giving them the knowledge of, yeah. But we didn't look into it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Based on your observations or experience, do you feel, is it more like 50-50, might be majority of the cases, minority, or might depend also on the settings and the intention of the experiment?
Well, in this theory, the idea would be that it stems from, well, if you see it in a cognitive perspective, the one giving you the answer would be your own self, but you might be creating images or symbols or entities that are giving you this information. But then this theory doesn't want to reduce reality, so it can't prove anything about what actually exists ontologically or metaphysically. So I can't answer that based on that study.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question.
So that was more of a reply to the previous question, whether the eureka moments are true or not. And I would like to quote Terence McKenna, which said something along the lines of psychedelics are like mutagenics for ideas. So basically what it means is psychedelic experience will give you a lot of funny ideas, some of which may be true, so some of which may not, some of which that are false will give you a eureka feeling. But I think the idea is you should note them, and when you come down and you are sober again with maybe a more rational mind, you can examine them, and you will have ideas that you think are like the best ideas in the world, and after that you think like, yeah, that was dumb. But you may also find some new ideas that turns out to actually be good, you know. So yeah, you basically have to filter them after the fact. It's kind of like a process of natural selection, I guess.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your questions. They were very interesting.